The expectation is that AI makes everything easier and simpler. People are doing more, but the task is becoming more complex because of the ability to do more and because your competitors are also doing more.
Welcome to episode 54 of the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast. I'm Tim Bond, founder of techpros.io. Today, I speak with David Keene, who is the European CMO of Wipro, an enterprise technology services business which has stemmed out of India and is now almost 250 million people globally. We explore how account-based marketing has changed and how David and his team approaches AI in marketing. And we discuss different use cases and different tools. What's really interesting is we get into a discussion about the difficulty of running a global services business where different jurisdictions have different laws, many of them ambiguous or uncertain. And we finish off by talking about what it takes to be a thriving marketing leader in 2025. Let's get into it.
So obviously I'm the European CMO. Wipro is a very large system integrator. We have 230,000 people broken down into 4 geographic regions, 2 in the Americas, Europe, and then the rest of the world. So Asia, Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. So I lead the European P&L, and we're about $4.5 billion US. So a fairly big organization. When we look maybe more broadly at the market, then the market has been interesting. I use that term very deliberately. We've been through what I'd say is a challenging period of time with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of kind of hangover from COVID as well. For folks, a lot of focus on, okay, how do we do more with less, which AI plays really strongly into. How do we evolve as organizations? What's the go-to-market strategy for the future? How does this really work? And AI has played into this perfect storm. And what we're seeing now is there's still a lot of headwinds around the geopolitical side of the world. We've got uncertainty coming from policy announcements, particularly in the US, and then responses, the tit for tat responses that are going on. So in some ways, it's a little hard to fully navigate a stable business environment there because it's not stable. And then what we're seeing is the buyers are responding to that geopolitical uncertainty and policy uncertainty with bigger groups of buyers. More people get involved in the process when they're buying something or making a decision. People are becoming more careful about the decisions that they make, and they're thinking about them more and they're researching more. And therefore the sales processes are getting effectively longer and more arduous. So AI then plays nicely into that in terms of being able to build a wider set of content for more of the buyers, understanding the buyer web more, the buyer committee more. Particularly if you think about the kind of things that we sell into, we're typically selling into 25 people, 30 people. But in the past, you would have had one go-to-market strategy, one content strategy, some events that you might run for them. We're now starting to differentiate those based on this bigger group. I think there's a really interesting angle here with AI. The expectation is that AI makes everything easier and simpler. The flip side of that is things get more complex and AI fills the gap with that complexity. So actually the ability to do more work just expands into that opportunity. So it's not necessarily making people more productive. People are doing more, but the task is becoming more complex because of the ability to do more and because your competitors are also doing more. So there's an interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess paradox around we've got more power, but everyone has more power. It's widely available and there's multiple tools and everybody's using this stuff. So therefore everyone can produce more. So therefore what's happening is the competitive intensity is increasing and the teams are having to rise to the challenge there.
I spoke to a couple of CMOs recently on the podcast and they were, certainly one of them, we had a conversation around the reality now, of course, is that with account-based marketing, there is everyone's expectations is that they're going to be marketed to or sold to in a highly personalized manner.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a result of that, as a BDR team, an AE team, a sales and marketing team within a service provider or product company in B2B, is that in order to break through and establish credibility, get people on a Zoom call, whatever it might be, you've got to make sure that all of your outreach is highly personalized. And as a result of that, what it means is there's a hell of a lot more work that needs to be done because it takes time to personalize work properly, putting in place the right methodologies, using the right AI tools. It's possible to significantly increase the amount of high quality content that could be used to engage larger numbers of buyers within a target account.
Yeah, 100%. So it's about more engagement and targeting people more, and it's getting harder to get to people. We're targeting people more. We're being more specific about who's on the target list. So if you look at the kind of way that we break down our accounts, clearly we've got accounts that we have a great footprint inside of, that we're really closely engaged with, that are like key accounts, if you like. There's then accounts that we've broken into and we're trying to grow and expand the footprint. And then accounts that we haven't broken into that we'd like to be new logos. So you can almost, that's a very simple view of it. You can almost think about those three segments as being distinct. In years gone by, we would have said, here's a campaign. Let's run this campaign to everybody. And it's all good. And here's a hero content piece that we produce, and it's just going to go out there and people will pick it up. And then we'll take a lead through to qualification stage, and then we're going to pass it to an SDR to give them a call. That's our kind of old, simple world. We've now broken it down into accounts that we're in, but we're not dominant, and accounts we'd like to get into. And then inside of that, you've broken them down by industry, by pain point, by behavior, all of these kind of different things by kind of growth stage. And then what you're doing is you're saying, instead of it being a campaign, I think the move that you'll see in the marketing world is more towards a program-based approach, where you're saying, here's a program that's made up of multiple actions for different target segments with different positioning potentially in all of those things. And then we're building these kind of core brand pieces, if you like, that we then leverage using an AI to try and connect into the bioprofiling that we're doing, the customer segmentation, and how that's all working. And if you think about it, we're starting to break down the ABM structure. ABM used to be, okay, one-to-one for a big account. It's now even like one-to-one to a particular line of business. So you've got multiple one-to-ones inside a single company. It's not just one account. If we look at another big bank, for example, you might be running an ABM campaign for one particular piece of it, maybe wealth management. Then there's another ABM program running for, I don't know, derivatives and kind of trading floors. You're breaking it down into pieces. And because that's so complex, you're then starting to say, okay, how can we group together accounts in a one-to-few strategy where we've got accounts that are similar in behavior, by behavior, similar in kind of geographic footprint, similar in like risk tolerance, etc. And how do we start to group together in a one-to-few pain-related or need-related kind of structure? You've then got beyond that, almost like your solution marketing piece where you're saying like, okay, can we target people who we think from our segmentation analysis are looking for this solution? Then you've got broad industry. See, your ABM is breaking down into this pyramid, multi-layer pyramid of the whole thing. And at the bottom of your pyramid, you've got your always on brand content.
Okay. Maybe we could get a feel for some of the AI use cases that you've been experimenting with at Wipro, perhaps some of the early successes you've seen, maybe some roadblocks.
So in terms of the pilots, the ones that are working are things like segmentation and targeting. If you think about looking at, okay, who the customers we're working with, what are they doing? And a lot of this is working on your own data rather than the public data. And it's pulling some public data, but it's mainly internal. So that kind of segmentation approach and like really understanding lookalike customers, understanding the buyers that are in those customers, how they engage with you, all of that kind of stuff. The personality types is really interesting as well. So using some of the AI tools that allow you to profile your buyers and understand actually what turns them on, what doesn't. That kind of stuff makes sense. And it moves you beyond just thinking about an ICP and then a set of personas into a company and a set of people with very specific behaviors. You know, you think about, here's a CFO, here's another CFO. They're different people. They have different behaviors, different preferences. So understanding what turns people on and what buttons to press, that's really valuable. Understanding your segments and micro segments and how to target them, really useful. Not really useful, generating lots of content. So when it comes back to my thesis around this expansion of content, this ease of production of content. If you look at some of the stuff that's online now where somebody's used an LLM to generate a white paper, you can tell it's a white paper. You can read it. The stuff that I'm seeing, the data I'm seeing is if you use, for example, an AI generated image on a piece of content online, you will reduce the engagement with that piece of content by maybe 50, 60%. So you'll see things that have got images and language that looks human will get a much higher engagement level than things that look AI generated. And people can sense, people are becoming tuned to, this is, and there's this phrase that's doing the round of AI slop. So if you end up looking at something, you're like, this is AI slop. Okay. Nobody worked on this. Nobody produced this. I can just dump it. It's not really valuable. It's somebody's search results that's coming through. So that kind of producing things in that way, that doesn't work. What works with the content piece is when you actually figure out, let's say you're creating a program against a particular set of accounts or a segment, and you then create some kind of like framework document. And what you can then do is you can use the LLMs to inject content in it. So you make it very human, you make it feel analog, and then the LLM will tune pieces of this for the target customer. So you then got like pieces of machine written code in a very human feeling designed piece of content. And people will read that, but it will equally be personalized for them. So the whole personalization thing, the vision was the entire thing will be personalized for David. And I will think, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want. We're not seeing that. What we're seeing is this is an injection capability. Most of it is going to be written and managed by people, but they're going to use an LLM or some other form of AI to do research to back the writing that they do.
Interesting. And if you're happy to share, what platforms have you experimented with for content creation?
Writer is really interesting as a platform. And one of the interesting things about Writer is it allows you to segment your documents into pieces, and you start to do, it acts almost like a word processor in that you're designing the piece that you're creating, and then you're starting to do research inside of it. And there's a whole range of others as well out there. People who are just going, you can go into ChatGPT now and say, generate me a LinkedIn post that talks about this particular thing, and you'll produce it and you can post it up there and it won't get much engagement. People are getting smart to it. And also the volume is going up because it's easy. The volume is going up.
But I think the reality, of course, is that there is application of AI augmented working, and there is intelligent AI augmented working. So we use Claude for our training programs, and it's phenomenal because you can upload so much training data, example deliverables, background content, context, audience data, information about you as the writer. And we found that communicating with Claude in a very humanistic way ultimately is going to result in, and we're seeing this, is that literally right first time. So it's very interesting that you so far have said that the focus for in terms of outcomes that are successful, and perhaps the focus right now for Wipro is around sort of segmentation, perhaps injecting, as you say, some personalization into a broader kind of context strategy, etc.
Understanding the buyer, putting the customer at the center of this, they're looking for micro-personalisation rather than macro-personalisation. I think the other thing about this Claude versus Perplexity discussion is, if you think about search, there's a if I'm using my phone to search for things, do I want it to remember everything about me? Do I want it to understand everything about me and maintain that context? Or do I want a fresh search each time? Because if you look at some of the challenges that you get, particularly when you're mixing personal and work through a single interface, you start to get weird results coming through, because it's thinking that it doesn't necessarily understand the work persona and the David persona.
Yeah. Perplexity is really just, it's a new search tool. Arguably,
it works.
Oh, and it's phenomenal. It's part of our toolkit, right? Perplexity is essential for quickly pulling up data that you can add into your, what we refer to as our AI workers in Claude, which are AI assistants for repetitive work, and then AI consultants for kind of more strategic projects, and which can support multiple content outputs. But Perplexity is a fabulous tool for being able to, for example, pull up buyer personas. Okay, so I'm targeting I'm selling this sort of product or this sort of service into this sort of industry. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Could you recommend some sort of functional job titles, functions that we should be targeting, and then break that down into, okay, within these, who are the likely buyer personas? Could you provide a detailed overview of these types of buyers, right? And then take that information and load it into Claude for clarity on who the audience is that you're targeting, for example.
And you build a project. If you think about Claude, you're using there in a complete work context. If I was using Claude in a wider context, I just bought a new training watch, new watch. Anyway, new Suntec watch. Trying to figure out how to do stuff with it. Clearly, the instruction manual is not amazing. Perplexity acts then as the instruction manual for how I'm setting up my watch and configuring it. Awesome. I'm equally using Perplexity for work-related things to pull back information and insights and the things that are going to help me make decisions around day-to-day work.
This episode is brought to you by Cogniscale.pro, where revenue teams learn to build AI assistants with Claude, boosting productivity by 300% or more. Is your team struggling to keep up with growing content demands? Cogniscale's 6-week program teaches you to plan, build, and scale AI workers that quadruple your content output while improving quality and brand consistency. Reach more decision makers with personalized messages, produce engaging social and web content, and accelerate your ABM strategies and campaign launches. Don't delay. Visit Cogniscale.pro to transition your sales and marketing team to AI first and start building your AI workforce to augment your team and grow your business. So, did you see the JD Vance speech yesterday?
Yes, I did.
It's very interesting, isn't it? This sort of interplay between what's going on with the US, with the Biden AI policy being ripped up. And as far as I can read into it, the foot is firmly down on the accelerator in terms of AI innovation, with safety as a sort of second consideration. Flip into Europe, and it appears to be almost the other way, or certainly a lot more regulation being put in around AI training, although there's a lot of ambiguity around exactly what the new law is, but also other regulation around what you can and can't use AI for. And so presumably what I just summarized there feeds into the sort of what you opened with around the uncertainty. Maybe if we just double click, is there anything else perhaps as a European CMO that's on your mind around this whole kind of uncertainty around AI?
Policy uncertainty is endemic. The whole thing in Paris this week is really interesting in that there isn't a global consensus here. We've got different, very powerful geographies and political groups with different perspectives. The world would move better if we could align ourselves around a common set of policy that was generally agreed instead of a conflict around that policy. There is not agreement on it. And I think the lack of agreement slows us all down. It doesn't excel. Because if you think about it, these tools are global. Like, we're operating in a global tech world. And that global tech world that we have there, if I log into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Writer or like whichever tech I'm using on a particular day, it's a single global product, but we've not got global governance. And in some ways, you need institutions and you need negotiation and agreement to allow these things to work effectively across geographies. So if I'm building things and doing things that will apply in the UK, in Germany, in Switzerland, in France, and they've all got different jurisdictions, again, I'm having to prompt the AI to say, okay, build this thing using the jurisdiction of Switzerland to engage with this Swiss financial institution using the standards that are in this world. Build this thing for the UK that's then also going to apply to the US, which again is slightly different. So again, it plays into what I said early on around the level of complexity is increasing. The people that we have are looking at this going, what? I don't know how to do this. I've not been trained. Somebody's just dropped like a smorgasbord of tools into my lab. Like, we're sitting here with 10 tools. Nobody's given me any training. Like, how do I use all of these? What do I do with them? Like, what's my playbook? How's it getting data? What's the data governance? What's the GDPR kind of situation? How do I apply them back to my CRM platform? People also haven't done, and maybe this is another topic to drill down in at some point, people haven't rationalized the data. So if you think about the data domains that we have, there's the public domain data that's out there, as you said, with different tools, different LLMs and different other AIs out there that are pulling all that public domain information. And then you've got all of the walled garden stuff that people aren't managing to get to using those LLMs, and people aren't rationalizing it effectively. So you've got this, like, how do we bridge the fact that we've got like huge amounts of data internally and we're using these external tools that don't have access to it and we can't grant access to it because of data protection, et cetera, privacy and all of the kind of good ethics stuff that we would follow. How do we bridge all of that? How do you do it? How do you make it even relevant? Be able to join all of these pieces together? How do you operate outside of the firewall, then move the process into the firewall? And this is one of the reasons I think DeepSeek is quite interesting from an open sourcing perspective. And I think you'll see people shifting some of the open source models inside their firewalls so that they can start to access internal data without it leaking out.
So I heard today that's part of OpenAI's strategy.
Hear that noise, don't see the evidence of that.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a complexity there of policy and governance, really important. We've seen the problems that we've had with data, just data protection, data privacy. And the reaction to that has been that people have shared less, data's become harder to come by. People are using tools to clean the internet of their own data so that they're not present. I recently paid a third party, for example, to just go out there and clean data from the internet for me. So cost me $40. They've gone away and they're using AI, interestingly, to find out what's out there and then using all of the data protection legislation, going and in an automated way, removing as much of that as is possible. So is the internet starting to forget is an interesting question there. You know, our assumption is the internet contains everything we need. Maybe it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's starting to lose a lot of the stuff that it had. The original vision for the internet was that it would hold everything and it would be there as this like thing for humanity.
Mm.
Are people starting to clean the internet and remove stuff? There's some interesting businesses on the AI front out there that are actually enabling you to start to clean your footprints and to clean what's out there and just to remove things from you and remove you from particularly data brokers. There's so many data brokers that are out there that are illegally sharing data. And I think you'll find more and more people start to think about this as a housekeeping task that they start to do to clean their profiles.
Interesting. So in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, regulation, I just thinking with GDPR, it created so much, I think anxiety is probably the right word within the business community. It changed a lot of processes, etc.
Yeah.
I think also, I feel that the regulation that Europe is imposing and might continue to impose could have the same impact with not necessarily a huge amount of benefit to business and society. But that aside, the reality is there's this presumably going to be this ongoing flux and uncertainty that exists. And you gave examples of a number of perhaps non-regulation concerns around getting your data organized in order to be able to leverage these tools effectively. Obviously, the training piece to get people using them. It talked about, it feels like this is just going to be an ongoing challenge, and there's probably never going to be this sort of global unity around policy. That end, is it really about, at the end of the day, about the level of risk that organizations are prepared to take? So on the one hand, you could have organizations that say, we're just going to crack on and do what we think is going to add value to our business and our customers. And yes, there might be some gray areas there, but we're going to just soldier on anyway, because that's how we're going to be more competitive. That's how our clients are going to be more successful. And then on the other end, you've got organizations that might look at something and perhaps have a legal team that are saying no. And it's that this is clearly not clear. The rules are not clear. And as a result of that, we aren't going to allow the organization to do X, Y, and Z. So would you agree?
I don't think it's about risk. I think it's about behavior. And I think there's the organizational behavior that gets adopted. And then there is the consumer business leader behavior. What I mean is organizations will take an approach to how they're managing data, which jurisdiction the data is in, all of those kind of things, how their legal teams are working, what's right, what's wrong. I think that the more liberal and risk-taking you become as a business, the more you create a reaction from your target customers that will potentially damage you. And customers will then migrate to those businesses that are legitimate and are following the rules. So I'm not a big fan of the whole thing of let's move fast and break things. You need to maintain trust. You need to maintain your ethics and values. And maybe that's a very European-centric kind of way of thinking about things, but I don't see that the Wild West approach really works in terms of a business strategy.
So just wrapping up, David, I'm interested in your sort of views of aspiring CMOs. You've been in the marketing world for many years, decades. What is your advice to younger people coming through the ranks to become an exceptional CMO in 2025? What do they need to be thinking about?
So I would say, don't forget the basics. It's really easy to forget what this industry is built on and to chase what's currently in vogue. As an aspiring marketing leader, let's call it marketing leader rather than CMO, I would encourage those people to be as T-shaped as possible. And by T-shaped, what I mean is get as many disciplines under their belt as they can, understand product marketing really well, understand brand really well, understand growth, marketing and demand, understand content production and how your content calendar is going to work, understand program architecture, understand marketing operations and revenue operations and how they fit together, and hang out with sales. Most marketing people don't like sales because they're motivated by creative kind of energy rather than necessarily a financial energy. As a great marketing leader, you've got to be best buddies with sales. You've got to be best buddies with finance. You've got to be able to read a P&L. You've got to be able to go out there to a customer meeting. You should be able to close a deal.
Sure.
Marketing folks, and this is why we still have this issue of, okay, I've generated these leads. Here goes sales. Now we're going to leave the conversation. No, you ride along with sales in that world. So you need to be a master of the marketing domain in a very T-shaped way. And you need to really be able to play hard in the finance and the sales world. And then the other muscle you need to build is, how do you engage back with product? Because one of the biggest challenges here is you end up with a product that comes down the line to marketing. Marketing then tries to get customers to pick it up, and actually it doesn't have product market fit, particularly in those early stage businesses. How do you understand that and go back to product and help them? And the fundamental question here is, marketing is sometimes seen as the coloring in department. I think, and I'm being flippant very deliberately there, how do you move into being a revenue stream? How do you move to drive business value? Will sales completely disappear in the future? And it'll be product, marketing, and customer success. I can see that triangle becoming a very dominant motion, particularly for some online businesses.
100%.
Just disappear and maybe are replaced with an AI. It's that kind of the creative marketing piece, the product design and creation, the customer support and success. I can see those three operating really cleanly together.
Well, and the brand ambassador and the subject matter expert to do that kind of last mile confidence, just it's going to be fine. It's going to work out, all of that, rather than when are you going to sign, just following up, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You've got all these tools like Gong, et cetera, that people swear by that really just spam tools, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
How do you move beyond that? How do you move to people volunteering to give you data? So if access to data becomes reduced over time, which would be my contention, people will give you less data. You need to build trust in your brand, in your offer, in your values, so that they will give you data and that they will trust you and they will want a partnership with you. This isn't about the top leads. Here's the best leads for you. Go chase them down and always be closing. I think that world is gone. That's not the world that anyone operates in anymore.
And it's going to be fascinating to see how AI plays out in that mix. David, thank you so much.
Been a pleasure. As always, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode with David, and thank you to David. You will find a link to David's LinkedIn in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe to the Enterprise Thought Leadership podcast, and we will be interviewing many more C-level leaders this year. I'm really looking forward to the different viewpoints everyone has on the podcast, and hope it brings you value. And looking forward to dropping next week's episode, which, fingers crossed, will be an interview I had with a very senior strategist from a global law firm. Let's see. Thanks again. Bye.